Hi there, Michael from Break a Pencil. I did a World Cup draft with some college friends last week. We've done this every 4 years for, I don't know, the last 30 some odd years. 48 teams, a snake draft, real money. And the most useful thing AI did for me actually had nothing to do with the research or analysis. It was the moment that it rebuilt its entire model because I told it something about the game it didn't know to ask about. Quick context. 4-person pool. You draft countries, winner takes all on the points pot. But there's also side money on lopsided scores. A 3-goal margin, the winner of that game collects $10 from the loser. 4 goals, 15. 5 or more, 20. It matters, and I'll come back to why. Here's what I sent Claude as my initial prompt. I didn't say rank the World Cup teams for me. I laid out the strategic considerations that I cared about. So I said, pool, draft a country, $50 per person. Here's the margins for the lopsided games. But I said a few things, right? Wins are points, but wins means advance to knockout, so more opportunities for even more wins. Also, where possible, try to avoid 2 of my teams playing against each other. It's a guaranteed 2 points if they tie, or 3 points for an outright winner, but it's less efficient than if the 2 teams were playing other teams. Other things to consider is draft order. It'll be random selection, and let's talk through some strategy. And as you can see, Claude came back with a full breakdown. All 12 groups analyzed, a tiered draft strategy, a recommendation on which draft slot to pick, and why. Solid work, smart analysis, well structured, but it's optimizing for the wrong thing. I told Claude something it hadn't accounted for. See this question it asked? How lopsided the margins cap, right? Does it cap at 20, and how much does it really matter? And I said it caps at 20, but in years past, it can easily climb to a net payout of $50 to $70 in addition to the $50 buy-in. And additionally, I've had some bad luck in past years with, shitty teams that get destroyed, and I owe a lot in that margin side bet. And look at what Claude responded with. That changes the math. A $50 to $70 net swing is roughly a third of the prize on top of the 200, not a tiebreaker, a second front you've been losing. So I'm going to rebuild the entire tool to actually model margin money instead of just nudging it. And let me show you the tool that it built. Notice every team has a projected number of points, right? And a category or a tier, and they're all ranked by that. But notice this column. Every team has a projected margin dollar. How much money it's projected to make by beating teams by 3 or more goals. So Spain, $27 plus $27. France is only plus 16. Why? Well, France is in what's considered to be the group of death. So it's got some really, really strong competitors in the group stage, whereas other teams don't. Green means it collects margin money. And as we get lower and lower, you'll see red means that it's expected to start bleeding margin money. So let me show you a great example. Qatar and Cape Verde. They're both considered to be equivalently bad teams. They're both expected to get 2 or 2.5 points. Not really going to do much in the tournament. Nobody's drafting any of these to win or win points even. But Cape Verde is in Spain's group. And so it's expected to bleed about $21 in margin penalties. Qatar's group has no elite predator, so it only bleeds about 5. Same bad team, but 4 times the difference in real cash. And the new tool now steers me away from these teams that are punching bags in the late rounds, which is exactly where I've been losing money for years. Look at France, I mentioned before. It re-ranked the top teams. France ultimately dropped below Argentina and Brazil when you factor in the margin money, right? The 4U is higher for England and Brazil than for France. And not because France is a worse team, but because, as I mentioned, France is in that group of death with no weak opponents to run up the score on. It collects almost nothing in margin. Same projected points, but a completely different value once you account for where the real cash comes from. Claude's research was fine. The draft tool was impressive, but the thing that actually changed my outcome, or hopefully will change my outcome, was 10 seconds of context from years of losing this pool. The AI didn't know to ask about the margin pot. It didn't know I'd been bleeding cash on bad teams. That context caused a complete rebuild. Every team re-ranked, different targets in the late rounds, a different draft. That's the pattern I see with every organization I work with. The gap between AI that's impressive and AI that's actually useful is almost always a small piece of strategic context that only the human knows to provide. Thanks for watching. If you want to be notified every other week when I release one of these videos, subscribe down below. And as always, break a pencil.